Emma, a 15-year-old girl with curly hair and bright eyes, stood at her bedroom window watching raindrops race down the glass. The weather matched her mood perfectly. 3 years had passed since her parents' divorce, and each day her father, William, seemed to drift further away from her life. Emma picked up the framed photo on her desk, a fading memory of happier times when her family was whole. Her father's smile looked different now whenever she saw him, strained and distracted. She traced her finger over his face in the photograph, remembering how he used to read her bedtime stories every night, without fail. Everything changed 6 months ago, when Victoria entered their lives. Tall and elegant, with perfect blonde hair and a dazzling smile, Victoria always wore designer clothes and expensive jewelry that caught the light whenever she moved. Emma's father seemed completely under her spell. "She calls me sweetheart, but her eyes stay cold," Emma told her best friend Lily as they walked home from school, kicking through autumn leaves. "Dad can't see it. He's just so happy someone wants him after the divorce." Lily adjusted her backpack straps. "Maybe you're just not used to sharing him yet." "It's not that," Emma insisted. "Last week I heard her on the phone when she thought no one was home. She sounded different, harsh and angry. The moment she noticed me, she switched back to her sweet voice. Something just feels wrong. The wedding." Invitation arrived on Tuesday, cream-colored card with gold lettering announcing the ceremony would take place that Saturday. Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring at Victoria's full name printed in elegant script. Victoria Helen Blackwood. The surname sparked something in Emma's memory, but she couldn't place it. That evening, while her mother Olivia worked late at the hospital, Emma climbed the rickety ladder to the attic. Dust floated in the beam of her flashlight as she searched through boxes of old newspapers and magazines her history-loving mother had saved over the years. 3 hours later, with dirty hands and sneezing from dust, Emma found it. A small newspaper article from 4 years ago about a fraud case in a town 60 miles away. The grainy photo showed a woman being escorted from a courthouse, a woman who looked remarkably like Victoria but with darker hair. The name printed beneath, Helen Blackwell. Emma's hands trembled as she read about how Helen Blackwell had seduced and defrauded a recently divorced businessman, emptying his bank accounts before disappearing. The similarity was too striking to ignore. Victoria, Helen Blackwood, Helen Blackwell. The same high cheekbones, the same confident smile. Digging deeper through the boxes, Emma found 2 more articles about similar cases in different towns. Each time, the woman had a slightly different name but the same method. She targeted wealthy, emotionally vulnerable men fresh from divorces, rushed them into marriage, then disappeared with their money. Emma carried her findings to her bedroom and spread them across her bed. Her father had done well from his property development business. He wasn't rich like some of her friends' parents, but comfortable enough to make him a perfect target. She tried calling her father, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Victoria had suggested they have a technology-free evening together, something that happened increasingly often. "What do I do?" Emma whispered to her empty room. The next morning, Emma showed the articles to her mother over breakfast. "I don't want to believe it either," Emma said when she saw doubt cross her mother's face. "But look at the photos, Mum, it's her." Olivia studied the newspaper clippings carefully. "This is serious, Emma. If you're right, I have to stop the wedding," Emma said firmly. "Dad's going to hate me for it, but I can't let her hurt him." Her mother touched her hand gently. "He could never hate you, love. But be certain before you do this. Absolutely certain." Emma spent the rest of the day searching online for more information. By evening, she had printed out additional articles and court records that confirmed her suspicions. Victoria had been using variations of the same name for years, moving from town to town, leaving broken hearts and empty bank accounts in her wake. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She rehearsed what she would say to her father, how she would show him the evidence, but every scenario ended with him angry or dismissive. Victoria had him completely charmed. Emma stared at her ceiling, watching shadows from passing cars move across it. "What if he doesn't believe me?" she whispered into the darkness. "What if I'm wrong?" But the evidence was too strong to ignore. The wedding was tomorrow at noon. Emma would have to stand up in front of everyone, family, friends, her fathers, business associates, and expose Victoria for who she really was. Her stomach twisted with anxiety. If she was wrong, her father would never forgive her for ruining his special day. But if she was right and said nothing, he would lose everything. Emma clutched her pillow tightly. Tomorrow would change everything, no matter what happened. As dawn broke, she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, the newspaper clippings safely tucked into a folder beside her bed, ready for the confrontation to come. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear blue skies. Emma stood in front of her, mirror, adjusting the pale blue dress her father had bought for her to wear as his special guest. Not bridesmaid. Victoria had made that perfectly clear. Her own nieces would be bridesmaids. Emma was just the daughter, an obligation to be seated in the front row but given no real part in the ceremony. Emma's hands shook as she placed the folder of evidence into her small handbag. She had barely slept, dark circles forming under her, eyes that even her mother's concealer couldn't fully hide. "Are you sure about this?" her mother asked from the doorway. Emma nodded. "I have to try." Olivia had refused to attend the wedding. "It would be too painful," she had explained, "and William might think I'm there to cause trouble." But she drove. Emma to the church, squeezing her hand before she got out of the car. "Call me if you need me," Olivia said. "No matter what happens." The church looked beautiful. White roses and silk ribbons decorated every pew. Guests in their finest clothes chatted in small groups, their voices echoing off the stone walls. Emma recognized her father's business partners, old family friends, and distant relatives she hadn't seen since the divorce. Her legs felt heavy as she walked inside. The folder in her bag seemed to weigh 100 pounds. What if she was wrong? What if this really was just jealousy, as Victoria had once suggested, when she caught Emma looking at her suspiciously? "Emma!" Her father's voice broke through her thoughts. William stood near the altar in a new black suit, his face glowing with happiness. For a moment, Emma almost turned around. How could she ruin this day for him? "You look lovely," William said, giving her a quick hug. Emma tried to speak, to ask for a private word before the ceremony, but her father's best man, Thomas, appeared at his side. "Sorry to interrupt, but the photographer wants some pictures of the groom and his best man before things get started," Thomas said, placing a hand on William's shoulder. William ruffled Emma's hair like he used to when she was small. "Find your seat, sweetheart. I'll see you after the ceremony." And just like that he was gone, pulled away into a side room with Thomas. Emma stood alone in the church hallway, clutching her bag. A clock on the wall showed 20 minutes until the ceremony. Not enough time to explain everything to her father. Emma took her place in the front row, heart pounding against her ribs. The church filled quickly. The organist began playing soft music as the final guests were seated. Emma felt a tap on her shoulder and turned to see her father's sister, Aunt Margaret. "He looks so happy today," Margaret whispered with a smile. "It's been wonderful seeing your father come back to life these past few months." Emma tried to return the smile but couldn't. The music changed, growing louder, more formal. Everyone stood and turned towards the back of the church. Victoria appeared in the doorway on her brother's arm. Her white dress sparkled with tiny crystals, the long train trailing behind her. Her face glowed with what looked like pure joy. If Emma hadn't seen the evidence with her own eyes, she might have believed this woman truly loved her father. William stood at the altar, beaming as his bride, walked slowly towards him. Emma's throat tightened. The folder in her bag felt like it was burning through the fabric. The ceremony began. The vicar welcomed everyone and spoke about love and commitment. Emma barely heard the words. Her pulse raced in her ears as she waited, knowing what was coming. If any person present knows of any lawful impediment to this marriage, they should declare it now or forever hold their peace. The traditional words hung in the air. A long silence followed. Emma's legs moved before her brain could catch up. She was standing, raising her hand. Guests gasped. Her father's face showed confusion. Victoria's serene smile faltered slightly. "Dad," Emma called out, her voice breaking. "I need to speak with you, please. It's important." The church fell completely silent. Even the organist stopped playing. Emma could feel dozens of eyes staring at her. "Emma, what are you doing?" William hissed, his face reddening with embarrassment. Victoria's smile had completely disappeared, now replaced by a cold, hard stare that sent chills down Emma's spine. For a split second, the mask slipped, and Emma could see the calculation behind those eyes. "Please, Dad," Emma begged, tears starting to stream down her face. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." William looked torn between anger and concern. Emma had never interrupted anything in her life. She was always the good girl, the quiet one, never causing scenes or problems. "William, shall we continue?" Victoria asked, her voice honey-sweet but with an edge Emma had come to recognize. Emma locked eyes with her father, silently pleading. Something in her desperate expression finally reached him. "Excuse us for a moment," William told the shocked gathering. He stepped down from the altar and crossed to Emma, taking her arm firmly but not unkindly. "This better be important," he whispered as he led her towards a small room off the main hall. Emma glanced back once as they left. Victoria stood alone by the altar, her perfect features arranged in an expression of patient understanding for everyone else, but Emma caught the flash of pure rage in her eyes before the door closed behind them. The small room off the main hall was lined with children's drawings from Sunday school. Colored crosses and wobbly Bible scenes hung on the walls, watching as William shut the door behind them. "This better be important," William said, crossing his arms tightly across his chest. His voice was low, but Emma could hear the anger bubbling beneath his words. "You're making a terrible mistake," Emma said, her hands shaking as she opened her. "Because Victoria isn't who you think she is." William's jaw tightened. "If this is about wanting me and your mother back together, it's not," Emma interrupted, pulling out the folder. "I wish it was that simple." Emma spread the newspaper clippings and printed articles across a small wooden table. Her hands trembled, so badly she nearly dropped several papers. William watched with narrowed eyes, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. "What is all this?" he asked. Emma pointed to the first newspaper article with its grainy photograph. "Look at this. Woman, her name is Penny Wilson. She was arrested for fraud 3 years ago, but jumped bail and disappeared." William leaned closer, studying the image. The woman in the photo had darker hair, but the same high cheekbones, the same elegant nose as Victoria. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Emma placed another article beside the first. "And this is Amanda Clark. She married a man in Bristol 4 years ago. 6 months later, she transferred $50,000 from his accounts and vanished." William's eyes moved between the articles. His frown deepened as he saw the similarities between the women in the photographs and his beautiful bride waiting at the altar. "She targets men who've just been divorced," Emma explained gently. "Men who are lonely, who have money, who are eager to believe someone loves them again. She's done this before, Dad. At least 4 times that I could find." William shook his head slowly. "This can't be right. Victoria loves me. We're happy together." "She loves your money," Emma said quietly. "Look at these bank statements I found online. All her previous husbands lost everything." William sank onto a child-sized chair, looking suddenly older than his 45 years. Emma laid out more evidence: court records, news reports, a police bulletin seeking information on a woman matching Victoria's description. 3 different towns, Emma continued, 3 different names, but always the same method. She finds divorced men with money, charms them, rushes them into marriage, and then cleans out their accounts. William picked up one of the articles, reading it closely. "How did you find all this?" Her name on the invitation, Victoria Helen Blackwood. I remembered seeing a similar name in one of Mum's old newspapers, Helen Blackwell. I kept searching and found the others: Penny Wilson, Amanda Clark, Elizabeth Morris. Different names, same woman. William's face grew increasingly pale as he recognized the pattern. In each case, the woman had appeared suddenly in town, found a recently divorced man, created a whirlwind romance, and pushed for a quick marriage. Names changed, but the method remained the same. Charm, marry quickly, transfer assets, disappear. "Last week," Emma said hesitantly, "I overheard her on the phone with someone. She said everything was right on schedule, and that she'd be done with this job in 3 months. I thought she was talking about work, but..." William stared at a photo of Victoria, or whatever her real name was, standing outside a courthouse. His fingers traced the outline of her face. "She asked me to add her name to my accounts last week," he whispered. "Said it would make things easier after the wedding." "Did you do it?" Emma asked, her voice tight with fear. William shook his head. "The bank said there would be a 5-day processing period. It should have been completed yesterday." Emma felt a rush of relief. They had caught Victoria just in time. "I need to talk to her," William said, his voice hollow with shock and betrayal. "Dad, maybe we should call the police first." "No," William stood up, gathering the papers. "I need to hear her deny it. I need to look in her eyes when she lies to me." Emma followed her father back into the main hall. The guests were whispering among themselves, shifting uncomfortably in the pews. Victoria stood near the altar, checking her watch. When she saw William returning, her face brightened with a perfect smile. "Is everything all right, darling?" Victoria asked sweetly, moving towards him with outstretched hands. "The guests are getting restless." William didn't take her hands. Instead, he held up one of the newspaper clippings so she could see it clearly. "Is this you, Penny? Or should I say Amanda or Elizabeth?" Victoria's smile vanished instantly. For a split second, her face showed pure shock before sliding into a mask of confusion. "I don't understand," she said, her voice still sweet but with a new edge to it. Her eyes darted towards the church doors. "What are these?" "You know exactly what they are," William said quietly. "The question is, who are you? Because you're not Victoria Blackwood." Emma watched as something cold and calculating settled in Victoria's eyes. The warmth and love that had seemed so real moments before were completely gone, replaced by something hard and dangerous. In that moment, Emma knew with absolute certainty that everything she had discovered was true. Victoria looked from William to Emma, then back at the papers in William's hands. Her chin lifted slightly, and Emma could almost see her mind working, calculating her next move. The church fell silent as Victoria's perfect smile slipped away. The guests watched with wide eyes and open mouths as the beautiful bride transformed before them. Her shoulders straightened and her chin lifted in defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about," Victoria said, but her eyes darted toward the exit at the back of the church. Her fingers tightened around her bouquet of white roses. William held the newspaper clippings higher so everyone could see the photos. "The police in Bristol are still looking for you," he said quietly. "And in Manchester and Leeds." A murmur ran through the crowd. Aunt Margaret gasped loudly from the front row. Victoria's brother, who had walked her down the aisle, stood up with a confused expression. "What's going on?" he asked. "Victoria, what is he talking about?" Victoria ignored him, her eyes fixed on William. The sweet, loving expression she usually wore had vanished completely. In its place was something cold and calculating that made Emma shiver despite the warm church. "You're making a terrible mistake," Victoria said, her voice no longer soft and gentle. "All because of what? Some old newspaper clippings that barely look like me?" "They look exactly like you," William replied. "Different hair, different name, same face." Victoria's face hardened. "That silly girl has filled your head with lies," she snapped, gesturing toward Emma with a sharp movement. "Are you really going to believe a jealous teenager over the woman you love? A child who clearly wants to ruin our happiness because she can't accept her parents aren't getting back together?" Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as all eyes turned to her. For a horrible moment, she wondered if Victoria might convince everyone that she was just a troubled teenager trying to sabotage her father's new relationship. But William's next words surprised her. "I might have believed that," he said calmly, "if you hadn't just called Emma that silly girl instead of by her name. You've never bothered to know her, have you? In 6 months, you've never once asked about her interests or her friends or her school. You've never remembered her birthday or her favorite food. You've never really cared about the most important person in my life." Victoria's mouth opened and closed, as if searching for the right words to regain control of the situation. Her eyes darted around the church, counting the exits, measuring distances. "This is ridiculous," she finally said, taking a step backward. "I'm leaving. Keep your pathetic ceremony and your broken family. I was only after your money anyway." A collective gasp filled the church. Victoria seemed to realize her mistake. Immediately, her face flushing with anger at her own slip. "I think that's best," William agreed, pulling out his mobile phone from his jacket pocket. "But the police will want to speak with you first. I'm sure they have quite a few questions. About Penny Wilson, Amanda Clark, and Elizabeth Morris." Victoria's eyes widened at the names. For a split second she stood frozen, then suddenly sprang into action. She lunged for her handbag sitting on the front pew, knocking over a vase of flowers in her haste. Water and white roses spilled across the stone floor. Before anyone could react, Victoria sprinted toward the side door of the church, her white dress billowing behind her. The heavy door banged against the wall as she pushed through it, the sound echoing through the stunned silence. William dialed 911 immediately, his fingers steady despite everything that had just happened. "My fiancée is Victoria Reynolds," told the operator, his voice clear and controlled. "I've just discovered she's wanted for fraud under several names. She's attempting to flee from St. Mary's Church on Elm Street." As William gave more details to the police, Emma watched her father's face. The calm control he had shown while confronting Victoria was beginning to crumble. His free hand trembled slightly as he described Victoria to the operator. When he ended the call, his shoulders sagged as if all the strength had suddenly drained. From his body, Emma moved to his side and took his hand. His fingers were cold despite the warm spring day. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered, feeling tears well up in her eyes. She had been right about Victoria, but that knowledge brought no joy. Her father was hurt, embarrassed in front of everyone he knew. The woman he thought he loved had never existed. William squeezed her hand. "No, I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I should have been listening to you all along." The church buzzed with shocked conversations. Some guests were making calls, others were rushing outside, perhaps hoping to see where Victoria had gone. William's best man, Thomas, was trying to restore order, asking everyone to remain calm and stay inside until the police arrived. Through the open side door, Emma could see Victoria's white dress disappearing around the corner of the church. For a moment she wondered if Victoria would get away, slip into some new identity, and find another lonely man to deceive. Then she heard the wail of police sirens in the distance, growing louder by the second. 2 police cars appeared at the end of the street, cutting off Victoria's escape route. Emma watched as the small figure in white stopped running, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Inside the church, William sat heavily on the front pew, still, holding Emma's hand. His face showed a mixture of pain, anger, and deep sadness. "I wanted so badly to believe someone could love me again," he whispered, almost to himself. "I ignored all the warning signs, the rush to get married, the questions about my finances, how she never wanted to talk about her past." Emma sat beside him, leaning her head against his shoulder like she used to do when she was small. "It's not your fault," she said. "She was very good at what she did." William looked down at the newspaper clipping still clutched in his hand. "How did you figure it out when I couldn't?" "I wasn't in love with her," Emma said simply. "It's harder to see clearly when your heart is involved." Outside, police officers were leading Victoria toward one of their cars, her beautiful white dress now dirty at the hem from her attempted escape. As Emma watched, she felt no satisfaction, only relief that her father had been saved from an even greater heartbreak later. The police cars pulled up outside St. Mary's Church with flashing blue lights. 2 officers rushed in through the main doors while others circled the building to block any escape routes. Emma watched from the church steps as a female officer led Victoria, still in her beautiful white wedding dress, toward a police car. "Is your name really Victoria Blackwood?" the officer asked. "I don't have to tell you anything," Victoria replied coldly, her head held high despite the handcuffs now circling her wrists. A male officer approached William and Emma. "We've been looking for this woman for nearly 3 years, he explained. "Her real name is Rebecca Taylor. She's wanted for fraud in multiple cities across the country." William nodded slowly, his face pale. "She almost became my wife today." The officer looked sympathetic. "You're not the first, sir. She targets wealthy divorced men, gains their trust, marries them, and then empties their bank accounts before disappearing. She's very good at what she does." Emma stood close to her father, watching as Rebecca was placed in the back of a police car. The woman who had almost become her stepmother looked back once at the church, her eyes finding Emma's through the car window. There was no remorse in that gaze, only cold anger at being caught. Inside the church, the remaining guests whispered among themselves. Some looked embarrassed, others seemed almost excited by the drama. Aunt Margaret was telling anyone who would listen that she never trusted that woman from the beginning. William sat heavily in a front pew, still wearing his wedding suit. His bow tie hung loosely around his neck, and his shoulders slumped under the weight of what had happened. Emma sat beside him, not knowing what to say. "The reception hall is all set up," Thomas said awkwardly, approaching them. "All that food and champagne. Tell everyone to go and enjoy it," William said with a sad smile. "No sense in wasting good food. I can't face it right now." As Thomas left to pass on the message, William turned to Emma. "How did you figure it out when I couldn't? I spent 6 months with her every day and never suspected a thing." Emma looked down at her hands. "I noticed her in the background of a news article I was reading for school about fraud cases. It was just luck, really. Her hair was different, but I recognized her face. Once I started looking, I found more connections." William shook his head in disbelief. "If you hadn't found those articles—" "Try not to think about it," Emma said gently. William suddenly pulled Emma into a tight hug, holding her as if she might disappear too. "You saved me from making a terrible mistake," he whispered into her hair. "I've been so blind. And not just about her." Emma felt tears welling in her eyes as she hugged her father back. It had been so long since he had held her like this, like she was precious to him. "I know I haven't been the father you deserve these past few years," William continued, his voice thick with emotion. "After the divorce, it was easier to stay away than to face the mess I'd made of our family. Then Victoria came along, and I thought I could start fresh without dealing with the past." "It's okay, Dad," Emma said, but William shook his head. "It's not okay. I've missed so much of your life, school concerts, parents' evenings, just ordinary dinners and conversations." He pulled back to look at her. "I want to change that if you'll let me." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They left the church together through a side door to avoid the remaining guests. William drove them to a small cafe where they sat for hours, talking properly for the first time in years. Emma told him about school, her friends, her hopes of studying art at university. William listened as if hearing the most important story in the world. Over the following months, William kept his promise. Every Wednesday evening, without fail, they had dinner together. At first, their conversations were awkward, filled with long pauses and careful questions. But gradually, they found their way back to the easy relationship they once had. Weekends became their special time. They visited museums and art galleries that matched Emma's interests. They walked in the park and fed ducks like they used to when she was small. William came to her school art show and stood proudly beside her painting, taking photos to share with relatives. On Emma's 16th birthday, William organized a small party at his house. To Emma's surprise, her mother accepted the invitation. "Are you sure this isn't weird for you?" Emma asked as she helped Olivia choose a dress for the occasion. "Your happiness matters more than any awkwardness between your father and me," Olivia replied with a smile. The party was a success. William and Olivia managed to be in the same room without tension, united in their love for their daughter. As the evening ended, William suggested they make family dinners a monthly tradition. Slowly, a new pattern formed. Not the old family they once were, but something different, perhaps something better. William and Olivia would never be husband and wife again, but they found a way to be friends who shared a wonderful daughter. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Emma and William sat on a bench by the river, eating ice cream despite the cool autumn weather. "I had a call from the police yesterday," William said. "Rebecca's trial is next month. They want me to testify." Emma nodded. "Will you do it?" "Yes. It might help stop her from hurting someone else." William looked out at the water. "I don't think I'll be dating anyone for a while," he added quietly. "I need to focus on what really matters." He smiled at Emma, and she saw nothing but love in his eyes, the kind of love that couldn't be faked or stolen away. Emma smiled back at her father. "We've got plenty of time, Dad," she said. linking her arm through his. "We've got plenty of time." A pair of ducks paddled past them on the river. The sun broke through the clouds, turning the water to gold. Emma rested her head on her father's shoulder, feeling truly content for the first time in years. Emma looked down at her hands. "I noticed her in the background of a news article I was reading for school about fraud cases. It was just luck, really. Her hair was different, but I recognized her face. Once I started looking, I found more connections." William shook his head in disbelief. "If you hadn't found those articles—" "Try not to think about it," Emma said gently. William suddenly pulled Emma into a tight hug, holding her as if she might disappear too. "You saved me from making a terrible mistake," he whispered into her hair. "I've been so blind. And not just about her." Emma felt tears welling in her eyes as she hugged her father back. It had been so long since he had held her like this, like she was precious to him. "I know I haven't been the father you deserve these past few years," William continued, his voice thick with emotion. "After the divorce, it was easier to stay away than to face the mess I'd made of our family. Then Victoria came along, and I thought I could start fresh without dealing with the past." "It's okay, Dad," Emma said, but William shook his head. "It's not okay. I've missed so much of your life, school concerts, parents' evenings, just ordinary dinners and conversations." He pulled back to look at her. "I want to change that if you'll let me." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They left the church together through a side door to avoid the remaining guests. William drove them to a small cafe where they sat for hours, talking properly for the first time in years. Emma told him about school, her friends, her hopes of studying art at university. William listened as if hearing the most important story in the world. Over the following months, William kept his promise. Every Wednesday evening, without fail, they had dinner together. At first, their conversations were awkward, filled with long pauses and careful questions. But gradually, they found their way back to the easy relationship they once had. Weekends became their special time. They visited museums and art galleries that matched Emma's interests. They walked in the park and fed ducks like they used to when she was small. William came to her school art show and stood proudly beside her painting, taking photos to share with relatives. On Emma's 16th birthday, William organized a small party at his house. To Emma's surprise, her mother accepted the invitation. "Are you sure this isn't weird for you?" Emma asked as she helped Olivia choose a dress for the occasion. "Your happiness matters more than any awkwardness between your father and me," Olivia replied with a smile. The party was a success. William and Olivia managed to be in the same room without tension, united in their love for their daughter. As the evening ended, William suggested they make family dinners a monthly tradition. Slowly a new pattern formed, not the old family they once were, but something different, perhaps something better. William and Olivia would never be husband and wife again, but they found a way to be friends who shared a wonderful daughter. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Emma and William sat on a bench by the river, eating ice cream despite the cool autumn weather. "I had a call from the police yesterday," William said. "Rebecca's trial is next month. They want me to testify." Emma nodded. "Will you do it?" "Yes. It might help stop her from hurting someone else." William looked out at the water. "I don't think I'll be dating anyone for a while," he added quietly. "I need to focus on what really matters." He smiled at Emma, and she saw nothing but love in his eyes, the kind of love that couldn't be faked or stolen away. Emma smiled back at her father. "We've got plenty of time, Dad," she said, linking her arm through his. "We've got plenty of time." A pair of ducks paddled past them on the river. The sun broke through the clouds, turning the water to gold. Emma rested her head on her father's shoulder, feeling truly content for the first time in years.